The very moment Ethan Cole realized he had just become a dollar millionaire, he also unconsciously signed the death sentence for his marriage. In the pocket of his cheap shirt, a flimsy piece of paper was suddenly heavier than an entire city. The folded Mega Millions ticket was pressed flat against his chest. $125 million. Even after tax, it was still a figure that would make any financial expert dizzy. Ethan, the mid-level financial analyst who was often yelled at by his boss for missing one line in a report, was now sitting silently on an old sofa in San Diego, staring at the string of matching numbers on his phone screen. He had checked it on the official lottery app on 2 different news sites, then repeated it several more times like an addict. Each time, the result was the same. He was the winner. A real lottery winner. A husband wins lottery on the exact day the universe was about to throw him into an emotional cheating story he knew nothing about. Ethan's hand trembled slightly, not because he did not believe it, but because he understood very clearly what those numbers meant. He could pay off the mortgage, buy a house with an ocean view, send Lily to any private school, quit his job, and never have to look at his annoying department head at the company ever again. All he had to do was walk out of the house, drive to the lottery office, and everything would change. But his first thought was not about a supercar or a yacht. It was his wife's face. Harper Cole, 34 years old, marketing director at Skywave Media, a rising tech startup in Los Angeles. On LinkedIn, she was the face of the modern successful woman. Every post of hers pulled in hundreds of shares. In the eyes of her friends, she was a lucky woman, with a pretty daughter, a husband with a stable finance job, a home that was not too luxurious but warm enough. In Harper's own eyes, Ethan was only the one who held the ground, the anchor that allowed her to fly higher without worrying about falling. Ethan knew that. He was not stupid, but he accepted it. He always thought that as long as he worked hard, loved sincerely, was willing to step back, Harper would always come home, would always return to the small dining table in the kitchen where Lily banged her spoon on her plate every evening. In the living room, Lily was sitting cross-legged on the rug, hugging a faded teddy bear. The 6-year-old girl with light brown wavy hair and big eyes exactly like her mother's, but gentler, less ambitious, was singing as she stacked crooked Lego blocks into what she called a princess castle. Ethan stood up and walked over to his daughter. He looked at her for a long time as if checking whether everything he was about to do was worth it. Lily looked up, puzzled. "Dad, why does your face look weird?" Her clear voice pulled Ethan back to reality. He drew in a deep breath. "Today, we are going to visit Mom at her new office," he said, trying to keep his voice normal. "Dad has something very important to tell her." Lily's eyes lit up immediately. "Do I get to go up the glass building? The one with the elevator on the outside?" Ethan nodded. The Skywave Media building was in downtown Los Angeles. 3 floors leased in a fancy glass high-rise. He had only been there a few times for year-end parties, always feeling out of place among Harper's stylish colleagues. In their eyes, Ethan was just the mild-mannered accountant husband, nothing special. They had no idea that in his shirt pocket right now was enough power to buy their entire company if he wanted. A plot twist none of them had seen coming. He tied Lily's shoelace, took her little coat from the hook behind the door. "Let's go, princess. Today is a big day." While fastening his daughter's seatbelt in the back, Ethan could still feel the lottery ticket burning in his pocket. Whenever he drove, he was used to calculating risks, interest rates, investment portfolios. Today, he was calculating a different equation, how to bring this news to Harper in the most unexpected, most beautiful way, like a scene in a movie. He imagined he would walk into the glass office. Harper would look up. The sharp eyes, colored by marketing reports, would suddenly soften. He would place the ticket on her desk, smile. She would burst into tears, throw her arms around him, say things like, "Ethan, I underestimated you," or, "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." Her colleagues would whisper in admiration. The look they gave the ordinary accountant would change in an instant. The car drove up onto the highway, leaving behind the small coastal streets of San Diego. Lily talked nonstop in the back, chattering about her drawing project at school, about her homeroom teacher, about a classmate who liked to joke that Ethan was a financial superhero. Ethan listened, half happy, half aching. To his daughter, he was always a hero. In Harper's glittering world, he was only a shadow. The distance from San Diego to Los Angeles was not long, but it was enough for Ethan's mind to circle through dozens of scenarios. Should he call Harper first, or just show up unexpectedly? Should he text, "I am coming over," and attach a picture of the ticket? Or just walk in silently and let the shock hit as hard as possible? In the end, the stubborn part of him won. Ethan turned off the ringer and sent no message. He wanted to see his wife's first reaction when it all hit her. Partly out of curiosity, partly because, deep down, he wanted to see whether Harper still saw him as her partner in life, or just as the man who watched the house and happened to have a bit more money. The city of Los Angeles slowly came into view with stacked blocks of buildings, flashing billboards, streams of cars like flows of liquid metal. The Skywave Media Tower rose tall, its glass facade reflecting the pale gray sky. Lily pressed her face against the car window. "Wow, it is so tall, Dad." Ethan parked in the underground lot, lifted Lily out of her seat. The parking elevator took them straight to the main lobby. Then they switched to another elevator up to Harper's floor. Every floor number that flashed on the digital display was a heartbeat slightly thrown off. When the elevator doors opened, Ethan immediately felt he had stepped into another world, the smell of expensive coffee, thick carpet, abstract paintings on the walls. Skywave Media's reception area looked like the lobby of a boutique hotel. A light wood reception desk, quirky designer sofas, warm yellow lights. Jenna, Harper's young assistant, was typing when she looked up. The professional smile on her lips stalled for a split second when she saw Ethan and Lily. "Oh, Ethan and Lily, you two, are you visiting today?" Jenna's voice suddenly jumped half a tone, unlike their encounters at year-end parties. Lily waved. "We are here to see Mom. Mom has her own office," she said excitedly. Ethan smiled politely, as always. "I have some good news I want to tell Harper. Surprise visit. Is she free?" Jenna glanced quickly towards the glass offices inside. It was just a tiny flick of her eyes, but to someone used to reading charts like Ethan, it looked exactly like an abnormal kink on a graph. Harper seems to be in a very important meeting in her private office," Jenna said, standing up faster than usual as if she wanted to casually block his path. "Maybe. Let me call her first?" Ethan frowned. Harper hated long meetings, and usually preferred meeting in shared rooms, rarely using her private office because she said it felt suffocating. A very important meeting in her own office in the middle of the afternoon did not sound like her. "We are just dropping by for a bit. It will not take long," Ethan replied. "I want to hand this news to her myself." He shifted Lily on his hip and stepped past the reception desk. Jenna immediately stepped forward, practically blocking him. "Ethan, maybe you can wait a bit in the lounge area. Let me just—" Her sentence was cut off by sound, very faint but sharp enough to cut through glass, through walls, through the confidence Ethan was desperately trying to hold on to. It was a woman's laugh, slightly husky, intimately familiar. Not the polite laugh of a meeting, but the loose, private kind. Then a man's low voice dropped as if speaking right next to someone's ear, then something soft thudding against a cushioned surface. Jenna's whole body went rigid. She clenched the stack of documents in her hand, eyes wide with panic as she looked at Ethan. "Maybe you should take Lily downstairs to the cafe for a while," Jenna said quickly, voice rushed. I will text Harper." Ethan looked straight into her eyes. In that instant, he understood the lottery ticket in his pocket was no longer simply good news. It was about to become a double-edged blade in a story, time-cheating he had never signed up for. Lily looked up at him, her eyes round and clueless. Ethan suddenly heard his own heartbeat clearly, each thump layered over the laughter that had just died away behind the frosted glass door at the end of the corridor. He held his daughter tighter and quietly walked past Jenna. "I'm just checking on my wife," he said, his voice dropping in a strange way. "I am pretty sure I do not need an appointment for that." Jenna reached out and grabbed his arm, the first time she had ever dared to touch this man. "Please, do not go in," she whispered desperately. "Please, think of Lily." Ethan paused for exactly one beat. Then another small sound, unmistakable, floated again from the far end of the hallway. His eyes went cold. He reached out, closed his hand around the handle of the frosted glass door bearing the name Harper Cole, and pulled. The door was not locked. The moment it swung open, Ethan's world exploded into sharp splinters. Harper's office appeared like a stage where someone had suddenly turned on the lights mid-performance. Pale afternoon sunlight poured in through the huge glass wall, spilling over the dark gray leather sofa where two bodies were scrambling for their clothes. A white shirt hung halfway over a chair, bare feet tangled, the tight-fitted dress clinging around Harper's hips twisted awkwardly. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with sweat, leather, and betrayal. Grayson Clark, CEO of Skywave Media, the man business magazines praised as a brilliant founder, the man who often appeared on covers with his wife and two children, was tugging his zipper up in the middle of the glass-walled office. The face that had been retouched to perfection for promotional shots was now red and warped. Harper, the exemplary marketing director, the image of a successful woman admired by everyone, was frantically buttoning her shirt, her lightly curled hair messy and stuck to her forehead. In the doorway, Ethan stood there with Lily in his arms. The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop. Only the faint ding of a distant elevator, the ghostly tapping of keyboards from the open space outside, and the pounding heartbeats of three people trapped in a brutally naked emotional cheating story remained. Lily was the one who broke the silence. "Mom? What game are you playing?" Her voice was clear and innocent, not understanding what she was seeing. She only saw her mother with rumpled clothes standing too close to a strange man, and her father frozen like a statue. Harper seemed to snap out of a slap. She stumbled back a step, yanking her skirt down, eyes locked on her daughter. A lifetime in marketing had taught her how to handle public relations crises, but no one had ever taught her how to handle the moment her child saw her like this. "Ethan," Harper choked out, her voice hoarse. "What? Why are you here?" The question was so absurd that, if he were not standing on the cliff edge of his marriage, Ethan might have laughed. He looked around slowly, as if inspecting an accident scene. The coffee cup on the table was still steaming. Harper's laptop was open to a slide deck. Grayson's suit jacket lay over the couch. There was no strategic meeting here. Only a blatant wife affair with boss caught in the act. In Ethan's mind, pieces began to snap together. The late nights when Harper was stuck at the office because the client changed the brief at the last minute. The weekends when she had to go up to Los Angeles to meet with the leadership team. The texts she shoved her phone into her pocket for, smiling thinly and saying, "It is nothing, just work." He had believed her. He had convinced himself that his wife was simply striving for their future. Now that future was twisted on a sofa. Grayson was the first to find his voice. He yanked his shirt down properly, fumbled with the last buttons, then stood up straight, trying to gather the authority he was used to wielding in boardrooms. "Mr. Cole," Grayson said, forcing the deep, steady tone of a CEO. "Clearly, there is a misunderstanding here." "A misunderstanding?" Ethan repeated slowly. as if tasting a strange dish. He set Lily down and took her hand. His eyes met Grayson's, calm to the point of being terrifying. "You want me to believe that my wife and her boss, in a locked room, half-dressed, are having a strategic meeting?" Harper hurried toward him, her hand shaking as she reached out as if to grab his arm, yet she pulled back halfway. "Ethan, please, do not say it like that in front of Lily. I was wrong, but let me explain. It is not as simple as you think." Throughout all the years he had lived with Harper, Ethan rarely raised his voice. He was always the one who backed down, the one who apologized first, the one who soothed. People were used to seeing him that way. A kind husband, full of goodwill and not at all threatening. A man so underestimated that everyone forgot he had once been a top finance student, who had turned down several offers from big banks to stay in San Diego because he did not want Harper to abandon her career in Los Angeles. They forgot that he understood money clearly, understood the silent power it carried, and he understood timing better than anyone. "Explain," Ethan said, his tone flat. He did not shout, did not curse. That was exactly what scared Harper the most. "I am listening." Lily looked at her mother, then at her father, sensing something heavy she could not name. Her small, sweaty fingers squeezed Ethan's hand. Harper opened her mouth, then closed it again. All the phrases she used to twist media perspectives, client opinions, the board's view, vanished at once. No campaign could rescue this image. "You should not have come here," she whispered. "Without telling me. This is my workplace. It is where you sleep with your boss," Ethan cut in. The short sentence dropped like a blade on the floor. "Is that not right?" Grayson took half a step forward, struggling to wedge himself back into the conversation. "Mr. Cole, I understand that you are angry, but we are adults. Let us look at this rationally. The relationship between Harper and me is personal. It does not necessarily affect Lily." Ethan turned to him. In that moment, another image flashed in his mind. Him walking into the lottery office and signing for $125 million. Grayson did not know. Harper did not know. No one in this office knew that the man standing in front of them, the one who always nodded politely at the receptionist and sat in the corner at year-end parties, now had enough money to reduce any of them to a small footnote in his life story. But he did not say it. Real power did not need to be flaunted. It only needed to be used at the right moment. "Your personal matter," Ethan said slowly, "is that you are betraying your wife and children. Harper's personal matter is that she is betraying her husband and daughter. My matter," he bent down and smoothed Lily's hair, "is that my child is standing here watching her mother like this. You think that does not affect her." Harper burst into tears. Not the carefully measured tears she used in meetings, but the choked sobs that come from a chest being squeezed. "Ethan, I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I am wrong, but I still love you. I still love Lily. I just wanted one more powerful man beside you," Ethan finished. "Someone who could open boardroom doors, put you on magazine covers. You did not ask for much, just a husband at home watching the child and a boss in the office to keep you feeling special." Harper shook her head repeatedly, denying, but she refused to meet his eyes. Outside, a few employees walked by, glancing quickly through the frosted glass, feeling the tension and hurrying away. Lily did not understand everything, but she understood enough to know something was very wrong. Her eyes reddened. "Dad, let us go home," she whispered. "I do not like it here." Ethan heard that and knew it was the final verdict. He picked Lily up, his arms wrapping around her small, trembling body. "I will not make a scene here," he said to Harper, his voice lowered. "Not for you. For her." Harper lunged forward and grabbed his sleeve. "Give me time, Ethan. I will end this, I promise. Just do not leave me. Do not destroy everything. Think of Lily. Think of our home." Ethan looked at Harper's hand clinging to his arm, the hand he had once believed was his refuge, his home. Now it only made him sick. "I am thinking of Lily," he said. "That is why I am going to do everything slowly, very precisely." No one in that office understood that sentence completely. This was not a hot-headed outburst from a betrayed husband. It was the moment an underestimated man woke up to his real power. He turned, carrying Lily away. Jenna stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale. She opened her mouth to apologize, but Ethan shook his head slightly. "You do not owe me an apology," he said quietly. "Thank you for trying to stop me, but there are doors that, once opened, can never close the way they were." The elevator doors slid shut in front of him, taking father and daughter down from the gleaming floor where his wife had just lost herself. The ride down felt longer than usual. Lily rubbed her eyes into his shoulder and fell asleep, tired and overwhelmed by emotions she had no words for. In the dim parking garage, Ethan gently placed his daughter into the car seat, fastened the belt, and kissed her forehead. Then he sat in the driver's seat, leaned back, staring blankly ahead. After a long while, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled Mega Millions ticket. A flimsy piece of paper, a gigantic number, a chance to disappear, a chance to start over, a weapon Harper and Grayson did not know existed. In the morning, this ticket had been a beautiful dream. In the afternoon, it had become the boundary between victim and strategist in a cheating wife story Ethan had never volunteered for. He looked at the winning numbers one more time, then slid it back into his pocket. The engine started, its low hum echoing through the gloom of the garage. On the highway back to San Diego, as the sun sank behind the rows of buildings, Ethan drove in silence, his daughter sleeping beside him. No one but him knew that, right then, a very different revenge story was being sketched in his mind. A plan not just to make Betrayal pay, but to protect the only thing still intact in his life, the little girl hugging a worn teddy bear in the back seat. The first call came in just as the car left the parking lot, and Ethan did not pick up. Harper's texts followed right after, pounding on his screen like fists on a cracking door. He watched the display light up, then fade, his hand gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. In that moment, he understood that the pain itself was not the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous thing was emotion, if it was not controlled. The road back to San Diego stretched out in the pale colors of dusk. Lily slept in the back seat, breathing steadily, still clutching her old teddy bear. Ethan drove slower, as if speeding up even a little would shatter everything beyond repair. Inside him, anger twisted, wanting to explode, to scream, to throw everything out the window. But he swallowed it. Slowly. Very slowly. Like a river quietly gathering enough water upstream to tear down the dam. He stopped the car in front of the house and carried Lily to her bedroom. As he laid her down and looked at her small face under the soft light of the night lamp, his chest tightened. He whispered a promise only he could hear. He would not let his daughter become a shard in the war between adults. In the kitchen, the house was silent, with only the hum of the refrigerator. His phone buzzed again. More messages from Harper, pleading, begging, threatening, justifying, a string of slippery words. Ethan put the phone face down on the table, took a deep breath, then opened a drawer, took out the worn ticket and laid it carefully in front of him. That thin piece of paper suddenly seemed to carry the weight of an entire world. A secret, a blade, a key. He did not call Harper. He called Logan. Logan Cole answered after only 2 rings. His older brother's voice was low, dry, and steady, the voice of someone who had seen too many ugly truths as a private investigator. "Talk." It took Ethan a few seconds to force the words out. When he finished, the kitchen seemed to grow colder. On the other end, Logan was silent. Then he exhaled, long and heavy. "All right, listen to me. Do not do anything rash right now. Do not fight. Do not make a scene. Do not cry in front of her. The more emotional you are, the more you lose." Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "What do you think I should do?" Logan spoke with the tone of someone who had walked the same wound, but had learned to turn it into armor. "Protect your kid first. Protect your assets. And to do that, you need to know the whole truth, not her version, not scattered pieces, the full chain, emails, messages, travel logs, accounts, cameras, witnesses. Once you have the truth in your hand, you are no longer a victim." Ethan closed his eyes. Memories flooded back. Harper laughing brightly in a new office dress, leaving the house before dawn. Her explanations about career opportunities not everyone gets. He had believed her. Not because he was naive, but because he thought loving meant trusting. It turned out that sometimes trusting was just putting your neck into a noose. "There is one more thing," Ethan said, his voice dropping. "I won the lottery. I have not told her." Logan froze. A stretched silence hummed like a taut wire. "How much?" Ethan did not answer with a number. He just exhaled very softly, admitting a dangerous secret. Logan understood. "All right, then everything changes. You have power in your hand. But if you use it at the wrong time, it will burn you. Listen, you keep it secret. You do not say a word. You do not show a sign. You put that ticket somewhere safe. From now on, you are the one watching, not the one being dragged." His voice turned sharp as steel. "This is no longer a jealousy issue. This is a game. Whoever plays with their emotions loses first." Ethan opened his eyes. In the reflection on the microwave door, he saw his own face, tired and pale, but his gaze had changed. No more fog, no more panic. A different stillness was forming, a kind that made people take a step back when they saw it. "I understand." Logan arrived before midnight. The two brothers sat at the familiar wooden table, yellow light falling over piles of papers, cables, external drives. Logan showed Ethan how to access Harper's email accounts, download backups of her phone data, work calendar, hotel receipts, sync the locations of her business trips. Each file opened like a door to a part of the truth Harper thought she had hidden well. Some emails started with formal greetings and ended with words too soft for professional boundaries. There were late-night calls, too long to be about work. There were flights where the two of them shared the same dates, the same hours, the same hotels. Ethan read every line, and his heart no longer stabbed like a blade. The pain had passed the sharp stage. Now it sank, condensed, turning into a layer of solid rock. In the corner, the wall clock hands moved slowly. Outside, the city slept. In the small house, a man once seen as gentle and dull was quietly stepping out of the shell he had been trapped in for years. Harper thought he would cry, panic, beg. That would have been the obvious twist. He did not. He chose silence. He chose preparation. He chose to take control. When Logan left, the eastern sky was beginning to pale. Ethan stood at the window, the ticket in his shirt pocket beating like a second heart. He placed his hand over it, not to dream about wealth, but to remind himself that he was no longer cornered. Tomorrow, Harper's world would look the same. She would think she was still in charge. But from this moment on, the scales had tipped. Ethan was no longer just the betrayed husband. He was the one who would decide how it would all end. Slowly, precisely, not a wasted step. And no one in their lives had any idea that the man they thought was weak had just awakened with a strength they had never imagined. The first text that appeared on the screen cut into Ethan's palm like a cold knife. It was not a passionate confession, not a remorseful apology, just a short, cruel sentence, neat like a familiar signature. He understands me in a way Ethan never will." That line, sent from Harper to Grayson, was enough to wipe away all the years that had seemed solid. The laptop screen glowed in the dark room, its blue light washing over Ethan's face. The files Logan had recovered were opening one by one: emails, chat logs, location records. Each line was like a fine needle. It did not stab deep, but there were many. Very many. Harper was not just betraying him with her body, she was betraying him with her mind, with comparisons, by ranking Ethan as useful rather than partner. Logan stood at the corner of the table, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the screen. He said nothing. That silence was heavier and sharper than any empty consolation. He had walked this path before. He knew exactly how it felt when the person you trusted most wrote words that proved you were only the backup option. Another email popped up. Harper wrote about business trips. She told Grayson that distance is the perfect cover. They changed hotels, changed meeting schedules, changed excuses. Ethan's heartbeat was no longer racing. It slowed, calm, dangerous. His eyes shifted from hurt to cold. Logan saw the change and knew it was crucial. The moment the victim stopped crying and started calculating. There was a parking garage camera clip. Harper stepping out of Grayson's car, her eyes shining with the feeling she had once reserved for Ethan. She checked her reflection, fixed her hair, then smiled to herself. That smile was not for her family. Not for Lily. It was for another life she was ambitiously reaching for. Ethan watched, not jealous. There was no room left for jealousy, only a chilling clarity remained. In his mind, all the pieces aligned. The endless meetings, the overlapping business trips, the dinner bills that never showed up on their joint account. Harper was not merely having an affair. She had built a parallel world where Ethan was just a shadow outside the door. Logan cleared his throat. "See it now? This is not a momentary lapse. This is a system, a habit, a choice." Ethan nodded. "And she thinks I am too stupid to notice." In that moment, he saw an ironic twist. Both Harper and Grayson had underestimated him so completely. They saw him as the gentle man in the background. They had no idea the safe man they sidelined was holding a secret powerful enough to flip the entire board. The ticket was still in his pocket, silent, heavy, calm as a knife hidden for the right time. Logan opened another folder, Harper's messages with her best friend. The words there were more arrogant, more brutal. Harper wrote that Grayson could change her life, that Ethan only suited simple dinners and stability. She wrote that she could not leave her husband yet because of too many financial ties. Those words no longer smelled of mere infidelity. They reeked of calculation. Logan shut the laptop. "I do not think you need to see any more. The rest is the same story, different dates." Ethan was quiet. But in that silence there was no despair, only a decision forming out of the wreckage of everything he had just read. "Will you help me?" he asked. Logan looked straight into his brother's eyes. "I will not just help. I will stand with you. But you have to be the one at the front. This is your life, and you are the one with the advantage. Do not let your feelings ruin it." Outside, dawn began to creep through the edge of the curtains. Thin light falling onto the table, over the stacks of documents, over the face of the man who, just days earlier, had been seen as weak. In that light he looked different, quiet, but sharp as a thin blade. Ethan picked up the ticket and rolled it lightly between his fingers. Not to admire it, not to fantasize, but to remind himself that he was holding something no one else knew about. Something that could protect his daughter. Something that could reshape the entire game. Harper thought she was running the show. Grayson thought he was the one in control. But the real power was in the hands of the man they had dismissed. Ethan smiled faintly. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who had finally seen the path he had to take, even if it was sharp enough to cut his heart. and he was ready to walk it. Slowly, precisely, not a single step wasted. When the door closed behind Harper, the air in the house suddenly turned to lead. She walked in with a carefully arranged face, eyes red but controlled, like an actress stepping onto a stage with rehearsed lines. She saw Ethan sitting at the dining table, the warm light casting a stillness over his face that made her shiver. There was no yelling, no rage, only silence. A dangerous silence. Harper moved closer, trying to soften her voice. She knew how to choose words, how to steer other people's emotions, or at least she had always believed so. "Ethan," she said quietly, her hand trembling slightly on the back of the chair. "We need to talk." He looked up. His eyes were no longer cloudy with pain. They were clear, but cold. No accusation, no pleading. That was what unsettled her. She had prepared herself to face a wounded husband, hysterical, furious, weak. The man sitting across from her was different, very different. "I am listening," Ethan said, his voice low and even. Harper inhaled. She chose to tell half the truth. She emphasized work stress. She said she had lost her way. She said it was only an emotional mistake. She said there was no future between her and Grayson. She said she still loved her family, and almost by instinct, she brought up Lily as her last shield. "Ethan, for our daughter, we can get through this. I need time. I need to be forgiven." He watched her quietly. For a second, something like pity flickered in his eyes, but it was not for their broken love. It was for the woman desperately clinging to something she had already lost. "I want to try," Ethan said softly, like a breeze. Harper exhaled in relief, her shoulders dropping as if she'd escaped a sentence. But to try, there have to be conditions. A beat of silence. Then he continued, his words clear and measured, like stones dropped into still water. "From today, everything has to be transparent. Your schedule, your phone, your emails, your work. No more dark corners. If we are really rebuilding, we do not get to lie even once." Harper froze. Slowly. Very slowly. Her gaze wavered. She was not used to being the one under control. For years, she had believed she held the higher ground. With her career, her connections, her choices, Ethan had been the safe harbor. Now, the harbor was standing up. I will try," she stammered. Ethan did not look away. "And one more thing," he said, his voice lower now, sharper, harder to read. "I want to separate our finances while we are in counseling. Just temporarily. We each manage our own share, so we do not hurt each other anymore while things are uncertain." Harper stiffened. That hit her. In a brief instant, her plans flickered through her mind. Financial advantages of staying married, the ties she relied on to delay decisions. Now, Ethan was asking for his key back. A plot twist. The one who had been seen as weak was the one laying down terms. Harper forced a smile, but her lips trembled. "Ethan, is that really necessary? Splitting money in a marriage, it feels like we are already planning to break up." "Exactly, because I do not want that to happen," Ethan answered, gentle but firm. "I want clarity. Transparency is the only way to know if there is anything left to save." His words cut off every escape route. Harper could not refuse without admitting what she feared most. She nodded. A heavy, reluctant nod. Upstairs, Lily slept. Each small breath from the little girl was a thread holding the house together a little longer. Ethan thought of his daughter. Every decision he made passed through her image before returning to him. Night fell. Harper slipped into the bedroom, closing the door behind her with the scent of tears and the bitterness of someone who thought she ruled, but was slowly losing control. Ethan remained at the table, his hand resting on the cold wood, his heart beating slow and steady. He did not feel joy, no gloating, but a line had been drawn in him. From now on, he would not be the passive man waiting for the next blow. He had crossed into another role, a man holding an entire game his opponents did not know existed. The ticket lay still in his pocket, unseen. It was not just an asset. It was silence. It was Ethan's new faith in himself. It was what reminded him that every decision had to be made with reason, not pain. Harper thought asking for forgiveness was a win. In truth, the moment she agreed to his conditions, the balance had already shifted. And she had no idea. No one did. Only Ethan's eyes understood this was not a journey back to the past. It was a path toward a new branching, where he would no longer stand as the man everyone underestimated. Outside, a soft wind rustled the eaves. The house looked peaceful. But inside Ethan, a reconstruction had begun quietly, slowly, patiently, precisely. And no one imagined that the silent man was preparing to change the fate of them all in a way only the truly steady can. The first counseling session began with a sentence that made the room suddenly feel cold, as if someone had opened a door to winter. Harper sat up straight. Her fingers interlocked so tightly they turned white, and said, "I believe everything can be fixed if we both try." Her words floated in the quiet space of the therapist's office, but to Ethan they were not hope. They were a thin curtain trying to cover a door behind which the truth had already settled. Dr. Naomi Lee, the marriage therapist, sat opposite them. Her voice was soft and slow, each word placed carefully. She did not look at Harper. She looked at Ethan, as if sensing that there was something in his silence stronger than any anger. "Ethan, how do you feel?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. Outside, sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting thin streaks across his face. His eyes were not red, not wet, not shattered. Only stillness. A stillness Harper could not measure. In the past, whenever they argued, he would sag. He would apologize, even when he was not wrong. He chose peace. But today, this was not the same man. "I feel," Ethan answered slowly and clearly, "that if what we are trying to fix is broken at the root, everything we do is just painting the surface." Harper turned to him. Fear flashed in her eyes, not because of guilt, but because, for the first time, she felt the scales between them had tipped. Dr. Naomi asked gentle questions, guiding them to talk about responsibility, choices, trust. Harper talked a lot. She talked about stress. She said Grayson came into her life when she was vulnerable. She said Ethan was too gentle, too safe, that she no longer felt she was moving forward. She used clever phrases and smart reasoning, the same tools she used in her presentations to executives. But the more she spoke, the more Ethan realized something. Harper was not remorseful. She was only sorry she had been caught. He did not interject. He just listened to remember, to see more clearly the Harper he had thought was a part of their family. The session ended with a healing plan, set appointments, transparency rules, emotional exercise. Harper held Ethan's hand in the hallway, playing the part of the wife desperate to save her family. Her fingers squeezed his, but this time he did not squeeze back. As Harper headed back to the company, convinced she had bought herself more time, Logan sent Ethan a new file. Hotel security footage, a tilted angle, a familiar head of hair, a door closing under warm yellow light. Harper was still going on, a quiet, stunning flip. A truth that did not need words. Ethan did not get angry. His heart grew sharper. The last illusions were stripped away. In that moment, he realized that pretending to forgive was not weakness. It was leverage. It was space. It was the time needed to prepare. That night, Ethan sat in his small office. In front of him were not just evidence, but Lily's future. The image of his sleeping daughter was the only measure that mattered. Harper came in. She was not crying anymore. She had put her calm mask back on, the armor she wore through every negotiation. "I know I was wrong," she said, her voice low, "but I believe we can get through this. You are a good man. You have always been." She thought it was praise. To Ethan, it was a sentence. His whole life had been cast in the role of good, so others could feel at ease doing bad things. He turned and his eyes were no longer soft. "I am not the man you think I am anymore, Harper." One sentence, short, sharp, like a cut. She froze, as if someone had pulled the stage out from under her feet. Ethan stood. He was not taller or stronger, but something around him had changed. He no longer looked like the mild man in the shadows. There was something about him now that made Harper step back. "We will keep going to counseling," he said calmly, "for Lily, but not because you want your old life back. Because I want to prepare my daughter's future." Harper did not understand the full meaning of that, but she felt one thing: she no longer controlled him. She turned away, hiding her shaking behind her hair. And when the door closed, Ethan put his hand on his pocket. The ticket lay there, perfectly still, like a secret from the sky. It was not just money, not just a chance to change his life. It marked the line between being pulled into someone else's game and writing the rules himself. From that moment, Ethan knew this contest would not end in tears. It would end in clarity, in control, in a power no one would notice until it was too late. The summons arrived in the middle of working hours, and the entire office at Skywave Media fell silent as if someone had cut the power. Harper stood frozen in front of the messenger, her hand shaking so badly the envelope corner sliced her skin and left a thin red line. Grayson stepped out of his glass office, eyes locked on the stack of papers with his name under co-respondent. The lavish workspace turned into a public stage for a crack that could not be hidden. Harper pressed her lips together. She was used to controlling images, arranging narratives, spinning situations. But at that moment, all her presentation skills, all her professional tone, turned to ash. A coworker walked past, a quick glance, a whispered comment like a needle through skin. She clutched the papers and hurried into the elevator, running from a world of staring eyes. Her phone vibrated nonstop. She called Ethan. He did not answer. Text followed text, no reply. The silence was not accidental. It felt like a steel door bolted shut. Harper reached home at dusk. She pushed open the door, breathing hard, heart pounding with fear and desperation. Ethan was in the kitchen, quietly pouring water, back straight, his calm posture frightening. The warm light on his face made her words die in her throat. "What are you doing?" Harper asked, her voice shaky and sharp at once. "Why did you let them bring the papers to my office? Do you want to humiliate me? I told you I was going to end it. Could you not wait?" Ethan set the glass on the counter. His eyes no longer hurt, only tightly contained cold. "I am not humiliating you," he said slowly. "That is just the truth, and the truth finds its own way into the light." Harper broke down, her strong facade collapsing. "Ethan, think about Lily, please. I made a mistake, but this family, it can still be saved." He looked at her. His eyes were no longer those of a man begging for love. They were the eyes of someone who had gone through the pain and come out on the other side. "This family," Ethan said, "has been cracked for a long time. I am just the last one to admit it." Harper trembled. "I will lose everything if this gets out. My job, my reputation, everything I have built." Ethan nodded slightly. "Every choice has a price. You made yours. This is the price." She stared at him, and for the first time she saw clearly how the power between them had completely reversed. The man she had thought was gentle and pliable now stood like solid rock, beyond her control. Ethan put another stack of documents on the table, terms. Transparency, custody of Lily, financial separation, boundaries as sharp as a knife. "I am not doing this out of anger," he said, his voice low and firm. "I am doing it for Lily. She needs a safe home, not a stage for lies." Harper bit her lip until it bled. She had thought she was entering a negotiation like any other project, but this was not a negotiation. It was a ruling. And she was the one who had lost the initiative. Outside, wind swept through the trees. Inside, time seemed to stop. Harper looked down at the table. The legal phrasing stared back at her. The evidence Ethan held. Things she had never suspected he could gather. Things she had thought she had hidden. She understood. She had not lost because she was caught. She had lost because she had misjudged the person in front of her. She whispered in a broken breath, "You were never as weak as I thought." Ethan shook his head. "I did not change," he said. "I just stopped pretending to be weaker so others could feel strong." Harper's fingers slid from the stack of papers. Her hands were shaking, but in the end she nodded. Slowly, heavily, bitterly, no more excuses, no more game. Upstairs, Lily turned in her sleep. The small, steady breaths of the child drew the last fragile border between two worlds. Ethan glanced up, his eyes softening for a single moment. Then he turned back. His voice was steady. "We will sign." The sentence fell into the room like the metallic click of a door being bolted. Harper turned away, tears falling onto the cold floor. Not because she had lost Ethan, but because she finally acknowledged the truth she had denied for years. The man she saw as a gentle shelter had never been weak. He had simply stayed quiet. Until tonight. Ethan walked slowly toward the window, streetlights stretching his shadow across the floor. In his pocket, the ticket lay undisturbed, a secret no one touched. It did not need to be shown. It just needed to wait. Outside, the city kept turning. Inside the small house, a chapter had ended. With reason, with clarity, with the quiet strength of a man once considered powerless, who turned out to hold the entire game. The emergency board meeting at Skywave Media the next morning took only 10 minutes to send Grayson's career plummeting from its peak like a stone hurling into a ravine. The chairwoman dropped a thick file on the glass table, each page flipped with a cold sound. Evidence, photos, timelines, hotel invoices. There was no room left for excuses. No exit. Grayson tried to stay calm. He was used to standing in the spotlight of power, giving orders, watching others bow, but today no one looked at him as a leader. Their gazes were the kind reserved for someone who had dragged the company to the edge. When the chairwoman read the final line, her voice was dry and sharp as a blade. "Effective immediate suspension." Grayson blinked. Once, twice, then everything collapsed in silence. No applause, no comforting words. Across town, Ethan sat in his lawyer's small office. Morning light shone through the window onto the neatly stacked folders. He listened as each clause was read out. Each item on Lily's custody, each section on separating assets, each binding point written in dry legal language but carrying the weight of a life about to shift. The lawyer asked if he wanted to add anything. Ethan shook his head. "That is enough, no more. I do not want revenge. Just fairness." His voice was calm, no rage or spite, but his composure radiated a different kind of strength. Not the strength of money, not the strength of striking back. The strength of someone who had seen through all illusions and chosen to stand firm in reason. That afternoon, Harper walked out of Skywave's building with dozens of eyes on her back. Some pitied, some curious, some mocking, some cold. The network of relationships that had once cradled her like a safety net disappeared, leaving her in a chill void. Her phone vibrated. A message. 2 words from Ethan. "Come home." Harper walked into the quiet house that evening, heart racing. Ethan was at the dining table, the signed documents in front of him. The silence in the room was so thick she could hear the clock ticking. "Grayson has been suspended," Harper said softly, clinging to a fragile straw. He lost everything. I lost everything too, Ethan. Can we stop here? I get it now. I just want to keep this family." Ethan looked up. His eyes were no longer as icy as before, but they were not soft like they once were. They were the eyes of a man who had crossed the last line and stood where feelings no longer ruled decisions. "Harper," he said quietly, "things did not fall apart today. They fell apart the moment you stepped out of this family but kept standing here as if nothing had changed." She sobbed. "I was wrong. I accept the consequences. But please, do not blow everything up." For Lily. Ethan nodded slowly. "It is because of Lily that I am doing this. She deserves to grow up in the truth, not under a glossy coat of lies." Harper buried her face in her hands, tears hitting the table with weight. In the middle of her despair, she realized something else. Ethan did not hate her. He was not bitter, he was not gleeful. That hurt more than any shouting. He did not need to raise his voice to prove he was strong. His strength lay in no longer letting his feelings lead him. "When did you start planning this?" she asked shakily. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "From the moment I realized I did not have to beg you to see my worth anymore." Another twist, another flip of fate. The man once seen as weak was the only one controlling the board. That night, Lily ran into his arms, laughing as if the world was still whole. Ethan hugged her tightly, his heart softening. Every choice, every step, every plan led back to that small moment. He was not fighting to defeat Harper. He was fighting to protect the quietness of the child leaning on his shoulder. Later, Harper stood on the balcony, the night wind tugging at her hair, staring at her reflection in the glass. She did not see a successful woman toppled by life, but someone who had lost the day she misjudged her partner. Inside, Ethan stood at the window, eyes on the distant lights. The ticket lay in a small wooden box in a hidden drawer. It had not been brought out. It was not a weapon. It was the only exit if every other door closed. Only he knew it. He whispered inwardly, "No rushing, no impulsiveness, everything will come at the right time." Harper thought the court date would be the end. Ethan knew it was just the checkpoint, and the real chapter was beginning quietly in the silence. The hearing was postponed after one short sentence from the judge, and the courtroom fell into such heavy silence it felt like the air had been sucked out. Harper stood in the aisle, hands slack at her sides, face pale. Her lawyer whispered something, but she could not hear. Across the room, Ethan said nothing. He nodded to his lawyer, then walked away, his calm steps making Harper shiver. New evidence had been submitted at the last minute: footage, payments, restored emails. A flurry of blows from the dark, not loud but enough to shatter Harper's legal arguments. The judge ordered further review. In a heartbeat, the board turned. Outside, the wind picked up. The sky was charcoal, swollen with storm. Harper moved quickly toward Ethan, eyes red but shoulders straight. "Ethan, when did you start doing all this?" she asked, voice trembling on the edge. He did not turn immediately. He looked toward the parking lot where Lily sat with Logan, safe in her car seat. Only when he was sure his daughter could not see them did he face Harper. "From the day I understood that truth is not something you ask permission to reveal," he said slowly. "It is something that needs to be put where it belongs." Harper bit her lip. "Do you really want to destroy me that badly?" Ethan shook his head. "No. If I wanted that, it would have been over a long time ago. I only want to protect Lily. You brought yourself here." His words were concise and free of malice, yet they squeezed Harper's chest. She had always believed Ethan would soften at the last minute, that he would grow weak, sentimental, look back at their past. But he no longer lived there. Her lawyer approached, voice low but urgent. "Harper, we need to talk about the new settlement. If you reject it, the court will rule almost entirely in his favor." She clutched her bag, vision blurring. In a flash, the years of climbing the corporate ladder, the praise, the bright nights in the city crumbled into dust. At the center of the collapse was the man she had viewed as safe, gentle, and predictable. He was the one who knew how to wait, step back, and strike at the right time. Ethan walked back to the car. Lily squealed when she saw him, her eyes as bright as if no storm had ever passed. "Dad, are we going home now?" she laughed. Ethan smiled and placed his hand on her hair. "Yes, we are going home." Harper stood far enough to hear, her heart clenched. In Lily's eyes, Ethan was the only light. For the first time, she realized she had become a shadow at the edge of the frame. Grayson's name flashed on her phone. She stared at the screen, then silenced the call. Not out of sudden remorse, but because she understood there was no one behind her to catch her anymore. Ethan shut the car door, his face reflected in the dull afternoon light. His calm was not coldness, it was the result of nights gathering pain and sharpening it into clarity. Logan looked at his brother and nodded. He did not need to speak. They both knew the emotional war had ended the moment Ethan stopped needing validation from someone who had betrayed him. Inside Harper, a late truth rose. She had not lost because her affair was exposed. She had lost because she misjudged the strength of the man beside her. The man she thought belonged only in the background, when in fact he was the only one with the courage to step forward when the time came. The car rolled away. The city slid by outside the windows. Ethan watched his daughter's smile in the rearview mirror, his heart settling into a quiet determination. No noise, no revenge. No need to defeat anyone else. He only needed to win against himself. In that moment, the balance of his life tilted fully to the man once underestimated, who in truth now held the right to choose. That morning, Harper knew she had lost before she even saw the judgment on the cold wooden desk. She stood still, hands hanging limp, eyes empty as the judge read the final lines about Lily's custody, the division of assets, the dissolution of their marriage. No wailing, no dramatic collapse. Only a silence stretching so long it felt like the world had swallowed sound. Ethan did not look at her. He simply nodded his thanks and walked out, steady and composed. He did not gloat, did not smile. He looked like a man who had walked a long road of thorns and now stood at a new horizon, knowing he still had far to go. Outside the court, sunlight fell on the sidewalk in thin golden stripes. Lily ran to him and wrapped herself around his legs, her laughter ripping through the heavy air. Ethan bent down, lifted her up, pressed his cheek into her sunlit hair. In that moment, every battle, every piece of paper, every bit of proof, every stab of pain faded. One thing remained: his daughter was safe. Harper watched from a distance. Her chest tightened, not for the loss of the marriage, but because she finally understood that she had lost the only thing worth holding on to. That night, the house was no longer hers. She packed a few remaining items, walked softly down the stairs, and stopped in front of Lily's lit door. Harper hesitated, then gently pushed it open. Lily was sitting on the floor with a puzzle. Ethan standing beside her, patiently waiting for her to place the last piece. When the girl saw her mother, she stood slowly and ran into her arms. No blame, no resentment, just a small hug, gentler than any verdict. Harper burst into tears. For the first time, her tears did not come from the fear of loss, but from belated understanding. "I love you, Mom," Lily whispered. Harper shook and answered, "I am sorry." Ethan stood nearby in silence, his eyes deep and still like a lake after a storm. No hatred, but no return. He only said one sentence, soft and solid as stone: "Live honestly with what you have chosen." For her. Harper nodded. She understood. She left, not because she was pushed out, but because she had finally seen her own limits. The door closed. One chapter ended. Another began. Weeks later, Ethan signed the papers to establish a foundation to help single fathers fighting for their children. Not to tell his story, not to show his wounds, but to turn what he had experienced into something valuable. Logan sat opposite him, looking at his brother with unspoken pride. "You went further than I thought," Logan said softly. Ethan smiled. "It is not that I went further. It is that, for the first time, I am walking in the right direction." He kept his promise to himself. He did not use the ticket as a blade. He used it as a key, opening a safe future for Lily and for the decent choices he wanted to make. No spectacle, no showing off, just steady, deliberate steps. One late afternoon, father and daughter stood on a hill watching the sun sink behind the city skyline. The wind was light. Clouds stretched across the sky. Lily held his hand and asked quietly, "Dad, did we win?" Ethan bent down and smiled. "It is not about winning or losing, sweetheart. What matters is that we are still standing." She laughed, a whole, unbroken laugh. Ethan looked into the distance. Deep down, he knew the greatest strength did not come from money or from breaking things. It came from the moment a person chose to move beyond their wounds, to not seek revenge, to not grow bitter, but to grow up. He had been overlooked, underestimated. But once others labeled him weak, he had learned to stand with calm. In the end, that was real power. With every step he took, he remembered one thing. No one defines your worth except you. The story did not end in hatred. It ended in freedom. If you have stayed through this entire journey, share how you feel. Would you act on raw emotion, or would you choose the steady clarity Ethan did? Leave a comment, like, and subscribe so we can keep listening to stories of resilience, of choices, and of people who may seem ordinary but are far stronger than they appear.